Most people think a relationship ends with a scream, a slammed door, or a tear-stained confession in the middle of the night. But mine ended with a thumb scrolling through a social media feed and a sentence. So casual, it felt like she was asking me to pass the salt. It was one of those stiflingly humid Tuesday evenings in our apartment in Lincoln Park. The kind of Midwest heat that makes the air feel heavy, like it's waiting for something to break. I was sitting on the edge of our West Elm leather sofa, the one we spent 3 weekends picking out, thinking about whether we should finally book that trip to Napa for our 5-year anniversary. I was 34, and for the first time in my life, I was actually looking at engagement rings on my lunch break. I was thinking about us in decades. Elena was next to me, but she wasn't there. The blue light from her iPhone screen washed over her face, making her features look cold, almost clinical. She didn't even look up when she dropped the bomb, by the way. She started, her thumb flicking past someone's vacation photos. I told everyone we're taking a break. It's just easier that way for a while. The room went silent. Not a peaceful silence, but the kind that happens right after a car crash before the smoke starts to rise. I felt my heart do this weird, slow thud against my ribs. You told everyone? I asked. My voice sounded thin, like it belonged to someone else. Yeah, she replied, finally looking at me with a hint of annoyance, as if I was being slow on the uptake. I didn't want people asking questions when I show up to Sarah's gallery opening alone this weekend. I figured if the narrative is already out there, nobody makes it a big deal. You're fine with it, right? At 34, you realize that when someone prioritizes the narrative over the person sitting 3 inches away from them, you aren't a partner anymore. You're just a character in their play. She was treating our 4-year life together, the dog we almost adopted, the late-night runs, the shared dreams like a monthly subscription she could just pause with a click because the content got a little boring. The weight of it didn't hit me all at once. It trickled in like cold water. It wasn't just that she wanted space, it was the realization that while I was busy planning a future, she had already spent the last 48 hours curating our demise. She hadn't come to me to discuss a problem. She had gone to the world to announce a verdict. My phone started buzzing on the coffee table. A rhythmic vibration that felt like an alarm I couldn't turn off. A text from my sister in Seattle. Hey, just heard about the break. So sorry, Oliver. Call me when you can. Then a DM from our old college group in Austin. Tough news, man. Lean on us. She had hit the send button on our relationship before she even looked me in the eye. At T34. You've been around the block enough to know how this works. You know that in a real partnership, the optics are the last thing you worry about when the house is on fire. But for Elena, the house wasn't just on fire, she was the one who lit the match. And now she was standing outside making sure the neighbors liked the way the flames looked. I looked at her, still calmly scrolling, and saw a stranger. I realized that my sister, her co-workers at the agency, even the guy who grooms our dog, were all more in the loop than I was. There's a specific kind of humiliation in being the last person invited to your own funeral. When someone respects the brand of the couple more than the breathing, bleeding heart of the person they share a bed with, you don't have a foundation anymore. You have a stage. And I was tired of being a prop in the past. I would have been the fixer. I would have paced the floor, analyzed our communication issues, and offered a dozen compromises to keep the roof from caving in. But something about the way she said it, so clinical, so final, so public, killed that version of me instantly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't beg for an explanation or ask for a second chance. I just looked at her, took a slow breath of that thick Chicago air, and nodded. Okay, I said quietly. Thanks for letting me know. The shift in the room was tectonic. For the first time that night, she actually dropped the phone. She looked at me, her brow furrowed in a flicker of genuine confusion, maybe even a little disappointment. That was the moment I saw her cards. She didn't want a clean break. She wanted a performance. She wanted the dramatic scene where I plead for her to stay, confirming her power over me while she went out to sample the single life she'd just advertised. She wanted to have her cake, eat it in a VIP lounge, and know I was back at the apartment keeping the oven warm. By accepting her break without a fight, I had robbed her of the script. She wanted a safety net. I gave her a vacuum. Wait, that's it? She asked, her voice tilting upward. You're just okay with it? You told everyone it was happening, Elena, I replied, standing up. It sounds like the decision was made before I even walked through the door. I am just respecting your wishes. I gave her exactly what she asked for. Total, literal space. Not the space where we still text goodnight or check in on the weekend. I gave her the kind of space that feels like an empty room in a house you used to call home. I was 34, and I was finally too old to play the role of the backup plan. That night, the apartment felt like a museum after hours, cold, silent, and full of things that didn't belong to me anymore, while Elena slept peacefully in the other room, probably dreaming of her new chapter. I sat in the glow of my laptop. I didn't write a cryptic status update. I didn't post a quote about knowing your worth or a picture of a sunset to bait her into a conversation. I didn't need a vent. I needed a clean slate. I went to my profile, hovered over the relationship tab, and clicked single. It was a small movement of a finger, but it felt like the firing of a starter pistol. Then came the memories. At 34, your digital footprint is basically a graveyard of your best years. I started with the Grand Canyon trip, that photo of us on the South Rim where the wind was blowing her hair into my face and we were both laughing so hard we nearly dropped the camera. Archive. Then New Year's Eve in NYC, shivering in Times Square, promising each other that the upcoming year would be the one. Archive. One by one, the highlights of a 4-year life were tucked away into a digital vault. I wasn't being petty. I was being accurate. Elena told the world we were on a break, but in the modern world, a break is just a coward's way of auditioning for someone new without losing their security deposit. If she was brave enough to tell everyone we weren't together, I was going to be honest enough to make it permanent. By sunrise, the Oliver and Elena brand was gone, not out of spite, but because I refused to live in a lie she had already abandoned. Moving out at 34 hits different. It's not just a duffel bag and a PlayStation anymore. It's roots. It's assets. It's 4 years of shared history etched into expensive furniture. I spent the next day methodically untangling our lives. I sat at the kitchen island with a legal pad, making a list that felt more like an autopsy than a move. The $2,000 sofa, the shared Netflix, the joint gym membership. While she was treating this like a romantic sabbatical, I was finalizing the stop. I cancelled the utilities and removed my card from the shared apps. Every unsubscribe felt like oxygen returning to my lungs. She thought she'd pressed pause, but a pause only works if both people agree to stop moving. I wasn't standing still. 2 days later, the performance hit social media. There she was in a Soho rooftop bar, wearing a black dress I'd never seen before, shorter and sharper than anything she wore with me. She looked radiant. She looked free. The fire emojis and get it girl comments were a masterclass in the soft launch. It was a high-definition broadcast of my replacement. She was testing her market value, confident that I was sitting at home in the dark, frozen like a museum exhibit. She wanted the thrill of being single without the risk of actually losing her safety net. She wanted the prize to stay in the trophy case while she looked for a better one. She didn't realize that when you walk out, the prize walks out the back door. I didn't want a confrontation, so I moved while she was at work. I didn't get the place. I just removed the Oliver from the equation. Books, my cast iron skillet, the espresso machine. The last thing I packed was my vintage Martin guitar, the one she always complained took up too much room in the hallway. As I slung the case over my shoulder, the hallway finally looked as white and empty as she'd always wanted. At 24, I would have left a 5-page manifesto. At 34, you realize silence is the only thing that can't be misquoted. I laid my keys on the granite island and left a single note. No signature, just 3 words. Enjoy the space. I should have expected the ego to kick in. A week later, she tracked me down at my gym. She was livid. So this is what we're doing, she snapped, ignoring my calls, making me look like a fool. I sat up from the bench press and looked at her. You said we were on a break, Elena. I gave you exactly what you announced to the world. Don't hide behind that, she hissed. You're making this look final. It is final, I said. She let out a bitter laugh. You weren't supposed to move on, Oliver. That wasn't the deal, and there it was. She wasn't mad she lost me. She was mad she lost her backup plan. I sat up, wiped my face with a towel, and looked at her. Really looked at her. You said we were on a break, Elena. I gave you exactly what you announced to the world. Don't hide behind that, she hissed. You know what I meant. You updated your status. You archived our photos. People were asking me if I dumped you or if you left me. You're making this look final. It is final, I said. She let out a sharp, bitter laugh. You weren't supposed to move on, Oliver. That wasn't the deal, and there it was. The ugly, naked truth of the matter. She didn't come to the gym because her heart was breaking. She came because her pride was bruised. I wasn't supposed to be a person with my own agency. I was supposed to be a landmark, a stationary object she could use to find her way back once she was done exploring. I was supposed to be the loyal dog sitting on the porch, wagging my tail for whenever she decided she was finished playing the field. To her. The break was a one-way street where she got the freedom, and I got the waiting room. She wasn't mad that she lost me. She was mad that she lost her safety net. She shifted her weight, her voice dropping into that familiar, shaky register, the one designed to make me feel like the villain of the story. "You're so cold, Oliver," she whispered, eye shimmering with a calculated hurt. "You didn't even try. You didn't fight for us. You just walked away. Did 4 years really mean that little to you?" It's the oldest trick in the book, turning your boundary into your betrayal. I looked at her, and for the first time in nearly half a decade, I didn't feel that desperate urge to apologize for something I didn't do. I didn't feel the need to prove my love by groveling. At 24, I would have fallen for it. I would have spent the next 3 hours explaining how much I cared, trying to win her back from a situation she created. But at 34, the fork clears. How do you fight for a relationship that the other person has already dismantled, packaged, and sold to the public as a break? You don't. You can't fight for someone who has already stepped out of the ring and told the audience the match is over. I realized then that in her mind, fighting meant begging. She wanted me to fight for the privilege of being her second choice. She wanted me to audition for a role I'd already held for years. She wanted me to prove that I was willing to endure the humiliation of her sabbatical just to be allowed back into her orbit. "I'm not fighting, Elena," I said, my voice steady and quiet. "Because there's nothing left to fight for. You dissolved us the moment you made that announcement without me. And honestly, I've learned that fighting for us shouldn't mean begging you for basic respect." I stepped closer, not out of aggression, but for clarity. "I'm not a placeholder, Elena. I'm not a backup plan. And I'm not a safety net you can tuck away in a closet until you're bored of being single. I'm a person. And this person is Dan." A few days later, we met one last time at a quiet, brick-walled coffee shop in Wicker Park, a place where we used to spend our Sunday mornings arguing over the Sunday Times and sharing a croissant. It was supposed to be the closure talk. The outside was crisp, that sharp Chicago autumn wind beginning to pull the leaves from the trees. And inside, the smell of roasted beans felt like a memory of a life I no longer lived. She cried. Not the angry, defensive tears from the gym, but a quiet, rhythmic sobbing. She looked at me over her latte and asked the question she'd been holding back. Did you ever actually intend to come back? Or was this all just a way to punish me?" I looked at her across the table, at the face I had loved, the eyes I had looked into while thinking about our future children, and I realized with a sudden, jarring clarity that I didn't recognize her. Not anymore. I saw a woman who viewed my heart as a logistics problem. I saw someone who thought my feelings were just an inconvenience to be managed or paused while she went off to find herself. She didn't want me. She wanted the version of me that stayed quiet and didn't complicate her narrative. "I would have come back from anything, Elena," I said softly. "A fight, a tragedy, a mistake. I would have stood by you through anything we decided together. But I can't come back from being dismissed." She reached for my hand, but I pulled it back, not out of malice, but because the connection was already severed. The current was dead. "You announced the break," I reminded her, "and I finally decided to take one. From the confusion, from the one-sided decisions, and from being the person who loves more than he is respected." I stood up, leaving my half-finished coffee on the table. I didn't wait for a final word, and I didn't look back to see if she was still watching me through the window. I walked out into the cool October air, the wind hitting my face like a reset button. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for a text, wasn't checking a status, and wasn't wondering where I stood in someone else's life. The break she had used as a weapon had become my greatest gift. It wasn't an ending. It was an exit. I stepped onto the sidewalk and started walking toward the blue line, finally moving forward because I had stopped waiting for someone who only wanted me when I was convenient. The break was over. My life was just beginning. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments.